Crosswalk for providing us a venue. Seems to be kind of a regular thing nowadays. I think I've had one town hall meeting. This is the second town hall meeting I've had here since the inauguration, and I suspect we'll probably have a lot more. So thank you guys for being here and for hosting us. I want to thank, Also, thank you to Napa Police Department for being here. They heard that you guys get rowdy. So they decided they better send somebody out. But thank you guys. Thanks for being cops. Thanks for keeping us safe. I want to thank HICAP, the Health Insurance Counseling and Advisory Program. They have a table in the back, and if you want to stop by, they've got some great services that they offer. Worked with them a lot. They're exceptional, so please check them out. And I guess that's a crosswalk table at the back also. Pardon me? Fantastic. So thank you for being here. I want to also thank Alex for being here on behalf of Christopher Cabaldon, our state senator, who's in Sacramento today, I'm assuming, in session. But thank you for being here. And then, too, I want to just point out my staff and thank them. Myra Ayala from the Napa office. Luca from the Napa office. Anna from the Napa office. And my chief of staff from my Washington office. Some of you may have worked with her from afar, but clearly the best chief of staff on all of Capitol Hill, and that's Melanie in the back. And then a huge thank you, and I want you to give it up for him, Governor Martin O'Malley from Maryland. Thank you. Thank you. He is the immediate past commissioner from Social Security. He did a great job there. He really turned things around. Things were on a real good projectile. And then we had this election. And now things aren't so good over there, as you know, or you wouldn't have taken time to be here. We wouldn't have filled the auditorium in Davis yesterday, and we wouldn't have had 350 people in Oakmont today if Social Security was running smooth. The governor knows the ins and outs of Social Security, and he's here to share with all of us the situation that we're in, what we can do about it, and to, I think probably as important, is clear up a lot of rumors. This administration, this president, they do a lot in the rumor space to convince people of things that aren't real. Someone today asked me why it is that members of Congress aren't part of Social Security, and they were convinced that if we were, Social Security would be run a lot better because we'd have an interest in it. And as I'll tell you, as I told him, we are. I am. And I'm just like everybody else here. Social Security goes away. My retirement security goes away. So I think every member of Congress should understand that, and many of them do, and they're working really hard on this. I understand how important Social Security is. I hear it all the time from constituents. I hear stories all the time from constituents, how important it is to them. And it didn't just start. This has been for as long as I've been in public service. I know that people are worried about this. I know people count on Social Security. I know how important it is for your retirement security. And I always tell a story that I think it's illustrative of my personal experience with Social Security. I grew up in St. Helena, and we were very fortunate to live next door to my grandmother. And my grandmother lived here for, I think she was born in Napa Valley, so she lived here all of her life. Her husband and her parents immigrated from Italy, and she worked in the Napa Valley. She worked at the Napa Glove Factory. Anybody remember the Napa Glove Factory? And and during World War II, she ran the outlet that they had for sewing gloves for Navy Seabees, and because all the men were gone, they were in the war, and her husband had a butcher shop in St. Helena. He died very, very young. She retired from Inglenook Winery, and she and two other women put labels on wine bottles, hand labeled them before all of the machinery. So they put them in a wooden jig with a light bulb underneath them, and they'd candle the bottles to make sure there were no impurities in the wine. And if everything was good, they'd put on not one, not two, but three labels, a front, a back, and a neck, all by hand. And she retired from there. And as I said, she lived right next door to us, and she lived a great life in retirement, in secure retirement. And I assumed it was because she was a member of the winery union, and I knew she was, and I thought she got a big pension. I knew she got Social Security, but I didn't realize how critical Social Security was until years later. I was going through some of her papers, and I found all the documentation from her union benefits that she got through Inglenook Winery. She made, in retirement, $54 a month in retirement. Now, it's not as cheap to live here today as it was back then, but even back then, $54 a month doesn't cut it. And it became crystal clear exactly how important Social Security and Medicare was for my grandmother, all of our grandmothers, and how important it is for us. So it is absolutely important. And then the other thing I want to just say is that it's not just the Social Security check that you receive. If you're retired, if you're disabled, if you're a survivor, it's really important to you, but it's bigger than that. It's important to our entire community. And I've got a number that I want to share with you. In Napa County, two numbers actually, in Napa County, there are 28,000 Social Security folks on Social Security. Every month, $54.7 million Social Security checks come into our county. So not only is that important for anybody who's on Social Security, that's important for the community. You can't take $55 million a month out of even Napa County and make it painless. Those are dollars that are spent across the economy, and they're spent immediately. There's probably not but 2 or 3 of you in this room today that take your Social Security checks and deposit them in a secret account in the Cayman Islands. That money is spent and spent now. Utilities, rent, house payment, car insurance, water, electricity, groceries, and that spreads all across our community. So this is bigger than just the Social Security that one person gets. This is important to the whole community. And it is important that we make sure, as it has been for the last 90 years, that Social Security is strong, and Social Security is protected, and Social Security continues to pay those checks every month without missing a beat. And I'm worried about it, as I'm sure you are, you wouldn't be here. There is a very clear understanding that the proverbial other side of the aisle has always tried to privatize Social Security, and they're up to it again now. And if you look at the cuts that have been made, if you look at the people who've been fired, the people who've been persuaded to leave Social Security employment, the office buildings, the office locations that have been closed, those that are proposed to be closed, this is all an effort to demoralize staff, and they're already short-staffed, and to demonize an agency that shouldn't be demonized. Those folks are hard-working public servants who do a damn good job. And the demonization and the destroying of the credibility and the morale is only to do one thing, and that's to tee it up for privatization. So somebody can say, look, it's a mess over there, we have to privatize it. And I believe that if we privatize Social Security, it's going to be terrible. And there's some people are going to make a lot of money out of it. Somebody's going to make a lot of money if it's privatized. And if times are good, you're going to get your check. If times are bad, probably not so much. But I'll guarantee you, whoever that private sector entity is that's making money off Social Security, they're not going to miss a check. They're going to get their money. And I think that's dangerous. It's an important program. It's the most successful program there is, and we need to keep it strong. So as I said, we have a real expert here. Martin O'Malley was the governor, was mayor of Baltimore, governor of Maryland, and as I mentioned, went on to be the commissioner of Social Security. So, Governor, thank you for joining us. Can we get a little Napa Valley welcome?
And let's give it up for one of the best Congress people in the United States. He also has one of the prettiest districts in the United States. We all knew what you were doing, didn't we? Yes, it's really, really gorgeous. I'm going to refuse to do any town halls in any other congressional unless it matches. Look at your camera so close, you're going to count the freckles on my Irish camera. So it's a great honor to be here with all of you, especially for Congressman Thompson asked me to come. I felt like either the Paul Revere or Johnny Appleseed of Social Security. I'm mourning not that the British are coming, but that a pre-apartheid South African named Elon Musk is coming. Has been there, left people embedded who've done a lot of damage to this agency. Your name is it David? Harvey represents people at the from Social Security on disabilities. He's seen it. Other times I feel like Johnny Appleseed. I'm just planting little seeds of truth so that you all can engage with your own neighbors. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have neighbors who say to you now, I don't even watch the news anymore. I have to turn it off for like just 2 minutes a day. An understandable reaction for our own emotional and mental health, but not really good for the health of the Republic. So I want to encourage you. The fact that you're here today, I mean, you are engaged. So I thank you for that, for not tuning in. But I also want to encourage you to invite your friends and neighbors back to your own tables of democracy and engage with them and help them be to blow up some of the big lies. Because as Congressman Thompson said, I mean, you can see a pattern. You're trying to demonize it or wreck its reputation with a lot of big lies. Then they're cramming up Social Security offices at the same time that they're paying your understaffed agency employees to quit. And you know what they're paying them with? Your money. They're not paying them in Elon's Bitcoin. They're paying them your money to leave. And so I want to share with you some of these truths so that you can, talk to your brother-in-law who only watches the Fox. And you can tell them, no, you know what, that's not true. This is the truth. So, here's what I want to do. I'm going to try to do it quick so we have time for question and answer. So if I go too quickly, you can come back on the question if I don't adequately explain something in plain language. I want to share with you, I want to burst some of those big lies. I want to share with you what's been going on for these last 100 days. Because they're probably the most difficult days that the agency's had to weather in its long history. And that's saying a lot for an agency that's been here for 90 years without ever missing a monthly payment. Even, by the way, through COVID. That was a pretty good trick. And then I want to share with you also, just have some slides to show you. So you can see what's really going on there and you can take it home, okay? So here we go, a little audience participation to begin with. Now we're in church, right? So, and it's not a Catholic church, so you're all free to sing along. Only the Catholics now. None of them are sitting in the front row. All right, when I say hands off, you say Social Security. Hands off.
Social Security.
Hands off.
Social Security.
Hands off.
Social Security.
So here we are. We're going to talk about Social Security. 73 million active beneficiaries right now, more than we've ever had because of baby boomers, people of my generation. Recently I read an article in Salon Magazine about a man that's done more damage with his team at President Trump's request than any other man in American history, and that is Elon Musk.
Boo!
And in this article, Elon Musk said, and I'm quoting, "Empathy is the greatest weakness in the Western mind." He actually said that. You and I believe differently, and that's why you're here. You and I believe that our greatness as a country, our greatness as a people, is actually our goodness as a people. So, true story. My wife Katie and I are now, for the first time ever, grandparents. Thank you very much. And I was holding this little guy at my son-in-law and daughter's apartment, and in through the mail, my son-in-law comes and he says, "Guess what? The parents of Joseph just got from the Social Security Administration." Oh man! And he opened it with my daughter and his wife as I was holding their baby. And they proudly looked together in awe at this Social Security number with their new baby's name already on it. And an individual number that he will have from cradle to grave. But it wasn't just a card, and it wasn't just a number. What it said was, this baby matters to his country. And our country matters to this baby. And ain't nobody going to take it from us. So your country never... So our country's never needed us more. And there is no greater act of caring and compassion that free people ever put into law than Social Security. And so we feed the hungry, we heal the sick, we take care of widows and orphans, people in the dawn of life, people in the dust of life, every soul. So let me blow a couple of the big lies about Social Security, and then I want to talk to you about what's been going on there lately, because it's kind of an aggressive wishbone offense they're running to wreck its reputation and to wreck its customer service. And so far, they've been successful in the minds of a lot of people. But the good news is, there is no more popular program in America than Social Security. Man, if you're one of those people that get Social Security, you get Social Security. And so 80% of Americans want to strengthen and make it better for the future and the present. What's that?
We paid into it.
You paid into it. It's an earned benefit. You paid in your whole lifetime. So look, here's big lie number one. Big lie number one is Social Security is going bankrupt because it's a Ponzi scheme. And it's going to topple over. They're interrelated arguments. They say both of them kind of interchangeably. But let's take care of the Ponzi scheme first, or pyramid scheme. To which I tell you, not true. Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. If it were, it would have lasted for 90 years. Social Security is a pay-as-you-go program. Last year, Social Security paid out $1.4 trillion in benefits. And those dollars came from the $1.3 trillion that all of us working in the economy paid into it. So it's a pay-as-you-go program. But commissioner, ex-governor, where did the difference come from? The difference came from that big built-up surplus reserve of $2.7 trillion that Congress intentionally built up back when the last adjustment happened in 1983 in order to cover the big demographic boom that was coming of the baby boomers. We baby boomers had already been born. They knew we were coming. And so when they drew a straight line on a 75-year forecast for Social Security, how many of you operate on a 75-year forecast? Social Security does, which is why Congress, and there is no tougher defender of Social Security than Mike Thompson. So it's why Congress makes these adjustments, and that's why they built up the surplus reserve. So 1.3 trillion came in, 1.4 trillion went out, and 100 billion difference was taken from the reserve. It's the only agency that actually carries a $2.7 trillion reserve, which might explain why they're going after it so much. Like the guy that robbed banks, and they asked him why he robbed banks. That's where the money is. And so this is. So let me show you a couple slides here. No, I'm going to bust a couple more myths. We did the Ponzi scheme, we did the bankruptcy. Oh, here's the zombie apocalypse. 12 million dead people. The size of the population of Illinois. Some of them said Elon Musk, 150 years old. Not to the bone with the big lie. Donald Trump doubled down and he told Congress some of them are 300 years old. Which would have meant that they were here for the founding of Jamestown. It is not true. It is totally untrue. And this is why. Anytime a person passes away and a death certificate is recorded in any of the 50 states and territories, it automatically, electronically, immediately comes to Social Security, and we stop paying. Now, sometimes the person dies at the same time that their pay cycle is going out. You can't stop that, but we recover that in probate. Also, Medicare. If you've been billing Medicare for 20 years and suddenly you stop billing Medicare, could be a miracle. But we also get that notice, so it doesn't happen. Recent OIG report, Office of the Inspector General report, is published online, and it was March 23rd, and it talks about an infinitesimally small number of claimants, beneficiaries continue to get a check after that. So that is not true either. Here's another one. It is riddled with fraud. Every time you pick up some plank at Social Security, here's all this fraud underneath. Everything's fraud. Everybody's stealing. Not true. Did you know that in Title II, which is the biggest part, the disability and the retiree survivor benefits, less than 0.5% are improper payments, whether overpayments, underpayments, or fraud. Elon Musk said famously on the Box, which is the only journalist, if you want to call it that he goes on. He said 40% of all the calls to the 1-800 number are direct deposit frauds, with people stealing direct deposits. He said, I've seen it myself. It goes on all day, and nobody ever stops it. 40% is what he said. The truth is, 1 out of every 3,100 calls to the 800 number is a successful direct deposit fraud. We thwart 4 others. If you want that in terms of the percentage, that's 0.003 or 3/100ths of 1%. Stated in dollar terms, that would be roughly 1/3 of it. No, 3/100ths of it. So it's not true. So let me show you a couple slides. Here's the other big lie: wasteful and inefficient. This slide. I don't need one actually. I have a laser, but I don't need a laser. You can see this slide. So this is the bluish gray graph. Is people that are active beneficiaries. Those customers who have to who 4 different weeks every month have their direct deposit payments kind of wash over the whole IT system for any updates to change the life circumstance, I want to withhold more, I've changed my address, whatever it might be, and then they go through a narrow legal office called Office of Benefit Information Systems to Treasury, and boom, those direct deposits happen. So those beneficiaries are in the blue. The red line is staffing, which started to decline about 10 years ago. But it wasn't a barometric event that made staffing decline in your agency. With your same hard-earned dollars that you put in to earn your benefit, you also put in the same dollars to have the customer service necessary to access your benefits or to make changes. And so in a sleight of hand about 10 years ago, House Republicans started level funding Social Security. Sounds okay, because when you hear level funding, you think level staffing. But when an agency is almost entirely staffed and IT needs, their fixed costs go up just like anybody else in the real economy. You know, the rent or health care or raises for employees in order to keep them working there. And so they have to absorb $600 million in a level funded year. And how do they do it? They let the grim reaper of attrition reduce their staffing while they put on a hiring freeze. So when President Biden asked me to go to Social Security to turn around the situation of declining staffing, growing customers, and therefore longer wait times on everything, that was the state that I found. 50-year low in staffing. And you see how sharply that red line goes down at the end? That's Elon Musk. And that's Doge. And that's Donald Trump. They have pushed more of your employees out of your critically important agency in a shorter period of time than ever before in the 90-year history of the Social Security Administration. And they're going to push more people out as the workloads become more and more unbearable and people become more demoralized because of the hostile work environment they created. And how did they do that? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me talk a little more about inefficiency and I'll come back to how they did that. Social Security is an insurance agency. We insure against people living their golden years in poverty. We insure against people being in poverty if they become disabled. Or, your orphans, somebody become an orphan that happened to be on the street. So if you compare Social Security's overhead, administrative overhead, to the benefits paid as a ratio, when Social Security operated well 10 years ago, their overhead was 1.2%. And you didn't hear people complaining about it, did you? It had now been reduced to, I think, 0.77%, less than 1% overhead. If you look at Allstate's 19% overhead compared to benefits paid. And Liberty Mutual, Liberty is 23% overhead. So this notion that there's waste, fraud, and abuse there is simply not true. The waste at Social Security has been recently created by Elon Musk actually paying people your money to quit. So this was a great article that came out in the New York Times just in the last couple of days, and it chronicles what has happened over just these last 100 days. Within about a week or two after Donald Trump took office, the person pictured here amid the torrent Social Security card was a 5 levels down person in the bureaucracy who was put on administrative leave, allegedly, for sharing data with the Doge, all of your personal data, contrary to the Privacy Act passed by Congress, and contrary to every fiber in the culture of that agency. They would rather fall on their sword than compromise your personal data. And so they put on administrative leave on a Friday, and then the Doge people called up the acting commissioner who had been the head of all of the operations and field offices while I was their career person in the agency. And they told her, we're going to take them off of administrative leave, and we want you to open up all of the data to the Doge team. She fell on her sword and resigned rather than do that. And she was replaced by Tuesday, after the President's Day weekend, by this guy, Leland Dudek, who's in this New York Times article. He immediately dismantled the division called the Office of Analytics, Review, and Oversight. That's ironic, isn't it? Since they want to root out waste, fraud, abuse, and improper payments, they do away with the internal controls on that. And then The very next week, he brought in two of the top performers in the agency, the head of the Office of Customer Transformation, head of the Office of Civil Rights, said to both of them, man and woman, today's your last day. Put your stuff in a cardboard box and tell all the 80 people in your office and the 163 in your office, today's their last day. Get a cardboard box, goodbye. Can't they be reassigned? A lot of them are short of retirement. No, they're being fired for cause. Today's their last day. So they created this spectacle, and only after they created this spectacle in the parking lot of people with their belongings on the hoods of their cars and crying on the shoulders of their longtime colleagues, then they said, Joyce Nidge, we're going to pay people cash to leave, if you leave right now, by a deadline. They had to set up 2 deadlines because a lot of those folks tried to hang in. If they were retirement eligible, they'd pay for a whole year if they leave today. Your money. Go home now, pay for the whole year, just leave. And that's how they took out 7,000 people in the shortest period of time. And I think they'll lose another 3,000 come the fall. As a result, all of the service delivery metrics started going in the wrong direction again. You've seen intermittent outages of the applications. Some of you may have my SSA accounts. And sometimes in the last couple months we've tried to access it, it says, sorry, I can't do it right now. That's going to happen more regularly. And ultimately, I truly believe that this will cascade into a benefit interruption for the first time in the 90-year history of this agency. I don't know for how long. I've never hoped to be wrong about something so much in my life. Well, maybe a couple of elections. But I think that's where we're headed. I don't believe that they will can ever wipe clean all of those records. Never say can't. But those are backed up every night. Your earnings record, so some people have said to me, should I print out my earnings record every day? No, I don't think you need to do that. But this is a very precarious time, and there probably will be an interruption for some period of time because of the things they've done. You know, beyond the 7,000 people, you know, they've reduced the staffing in the IT department, the people that keep these old systems going, by 50%. I don't know about you all, when I had my first car, it was an old car. It was a 1972 Pontiac Catalina. And when it would break down and I'd have to repair it, when I complained, my dad would say, son, just because it's old doesn't mean you don't have to maintain it. And so the people they shoved out were the only people that understand how that COBOL system intersects with the other 2,000 applications. But it doesn't need to be that way. So, this shows productivity. These folks keep track of a lot of numbers and have for 90 years. In fact, they always get the highest, cleanest audit rating from people like Grant Thornton that did their audit for 4 years and Ernst & Young while I was there. This is their productivity numbers over the last 2 years. The biggest upticks to productivity that they've been able to achieve since 2013, because fewer and fewer people are running faster and faster up and down the moving escalator at your agency, again, for no good reason. So we created and tricked out this room, you know, like calling a huddle in a football game. We would get together every 2 weeks on a regular rotating basis to run the 8 biggest problems we faced. One of them was the hour, sometimes hour and a half wait time on the 1-800 number. I shared with President Biden, sir, 8 million people calling your 1-800 number every month. And we put them on hold for an hour and a half routinely. And I said, I've not come a lot of doors, I run for office. But I've never annoyed 8 million people a month. And we can't be doing that anymore come October. So the other things we looked at was like the disability determinations, the days it takes to get to an administrative law judge's decision, overpayments, underpayments, and making the changes necessary to do that. After the conclusion of these meetings, after 1 hour, we would adjourn across the hall to this room, which is called, well, can anybody guess the name of this room? Yes, the follow-up room. And the reason we went there to do the after action was to give people permission to ask or say something that they might not have wanted to say in that other room, because we live streamed that to 120 senior executive service people all over the country. We live streamed it to Ways and Means. Congressman Thompson sits on the committee of jurisdiction under Social Security, one of the most important committees, Ways and Means. We invited staff, Democrats and Republicans, to see us wrestling with these challenges, and we also live streamed it to our overlords at OMB. So in this room, we'd ask the question, what do we need to follow up on within the next 2 weeks so we can move this ball down the field? And in all of those meetings, we asked, is it working? Is it not? Are we getting better? Or are we not? So this is a map of the 1,211 catchment areas of the field offices all across America. We started a medallion survey that would ask customers about their experience in those offices. So that was real-time live data, maybe not exactly like, but real-time, at least to the most recent 2-week period, that we used to have online, as well as these other metrics I'm going to show you. They've taken all of those off now, because they're going in the wrong direction. But we went to the international colors of red to green. Green was good, okay? Here's the 1-800 number. In January, average speed answer was 42.5 minutes. Those men and women got it down to 12.8 minutes by October. And where you see it going back up dramatically at the end of the year, that's Donald Trump, that's Elon Musk, that's Doge, and that's what it looks like when you return to a 20% attrition rate in your call centers. Where, by the way, it takes like 6 months to train people, because this is like asking Amazon where your t-shirt is. Their goal had been to effectuate into pay status within 2 weeks, at least 85% of those applying for retirement. And that's a huge number of what they do. They hadn't really been above that since 2019, suffered a big reversal with the pandemic. But that's where they got to in the course of last year. They got it up to 87% again, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, right? This, you see that precipitous downward move? Before they took these numbers off the website, that downward move in the wrong direction is Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge. And that's what happens when you reduce staffing to probably what's now 60-year low. This is, pardon? Sure. You good? And I'll provide all these slides to you so your staff has material in case anybody needs to see them after those times. So this is initial disability determinations. Each of the 50 states has an Office of Disability Determinations. Your Social Security dollars pays for those staffers. They've also been greatly depleted. This looks like it might look like a California fire map or a climate change map, but it's actually a little blurry from where you sit. In Maryland, my home state, the average time for an initial disability determination was 359 days. More people now die. California is better than most, by the way. I have visited your DDS office. Very well led and very well done. More people now die awaiting their initial disability determination than at any time in the history of this portion of the program, which Dwight Eisenhower signed into law in 1953. We were able to bring down, and this backlog had been rising for 10 years. We were able to make some policy changes, encouraged by Congressman Thompson and supported by him, like that 5-year past relevant work instead of making people come forward with 15 years of evidence of past relevant work. So we're able to get that going in a better direction. It's no longer going in that better direction, or soon will be taking up if it's not already. Actually, it was before they took it down. It was starting to take up. These are the administrative law judge hearings. Social Security runs the biggest adjudicatory body, real judges in black robes, that conduct hearings on when you appeal from being denied an initial disability determination, or some other things if you're denied. You can appeal to administrative law judge. When I first got there, it was 405 days for a decision. A full-blown decision, on the record, somebody keeping notes. They got it down to 277 days, and that's a 25-year best for them as an agency. This is what that map looked like. These are now the catchment areas of those judicial areas, if you will. The dark green, of which there is none here, is 270 days or less. And that's where they got to by the end of the year. So, that's the story of where we're at right now. And some of you may be wondering, okay, I came here. Maybe I have some plain language rebuttals for some of my friends, including my good brother-in-law who only watches Fox. We're going to share with him the truth too. But the most important thing you can do right now, I think they've taken 90% of the actions necessary to lead to a benefit interruption for some period of time, and before they get it back on track again. But your voice is really important. I've done town halls all across the country. People have woken up to this, and people are calling their congresspeople, their senators. They're calling people in other districts of the country that have jurisdiction over this, like the chair of House Appropriations, or the chair of the subcommittee over Social Security. So don't let them rob you of your agency, your voice, or our inherent and right belief that this is still a democracy. Our voices matter. You saw all those people turning out all over the country last weekend. We need to save Social Security. We can save Social Security. And part of that is, yes, electing great congresspeople like, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say electing. This is an official site, so strike that. Part of that depends on congresspeople fighting for us, but a lot more of that depends on you. You have the highest title in the land. You are citizens. And so make sure your voice is heard to defend Social Security. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very, very much. We're going to open up for questions. And Mila will carry a microphone around. If anybody has a question, she'll come to you.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll start right in the front.
Thank you. First, Congressman Thompson and Governor O'Malley, thank you very much for your many years of public service. It's greatly appreciated. My name is Harvey Sackett. For 47 years, I've exclusively represented disability claims before the agency and the United States courts. Before I came today, I checked with my office. Right now, we have 497 clients whose disability claims are pending at the state agency, what the governor referred to as DBS. My staff also told me that right now the average time for a claim to get adjudicated by the state and move to the hearing level is 18 months. So unfortunately, I have clients that are in very bad shape, and some of them are passing away, as the governor mentioned. My question for you, Governor, is this. Did you see anything during your tenure that indicated that at some point this backlog was going to be diminished? Because ironically, that for all the cases I just mentioned, 497, we have less than 100 that are at the hearing level. So there's this great imbalance between the two. Now, two things are going to happen. Either number one, it's going to remain this way, and my client's going to continue to wait 18 months. Or number two, and this is kind of the good news, bad news, all of a sudden the agency is going to start getting their act together, and then there's going to be the dam breaking, and there'll be some hearings before ALJs. I'd like to have that problem on behalf of my clients. I don't see that happening. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Great question. It is a pipeline. I'm sorry to hear about California's reversal. There were a lot of things we did. I put back up the graph that shows the backlog where we got over the top of Kilimanjaro and started bringing it back down again. But then the election happened. And a lot of the tiger teams, if you will, process improvement teams, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there are greater efficiencies that can be brought about by squeezing out what we would call process waste. It's not below too many staff. It's just the time it takes to get medical records and that sort of thing. So here's why the ALJs did so much better than DDS. Congress, back in 2015, I think, maybe 16, allocated more money to the administrative law judge portion of Social Security because they had a backlog that was going that way at that appellate level. And you saw what they could do by bringing it down. They've also attrited down their staff over time. as they've gotten that backlog down and a more efficient, speed with 277 days. These guys have done, and they're mostly guys. If you ever read the articles about the Doge team, they seem to, look like an all-male prep school. I think we're going to be years recovering from this, honestly. I think we're going to be years. It takes a lot to train up a initial disability determination. I mean, a person that's skilled in that, and absent the staff, it's going to be hard. And when you look at the damage they've done, I mean, what person wants to go into that when they feel like there's a sort of Damocles hanging over their head on their job? So we're in for some rough sledding, and I don't see, we made some policy changes, so I talked about one of them, and also the collateral stop that allows us to send a bunch of them back to the field officers for more summary adjudication. I think most of those things that could be done were done in the course of that 1 year. Beware though, beware. I think they're going to use AI to replace human judges that make decisions on individual people's cases. And I think they're trying to precipitate a big emergency in the inability to get to hearings and more people dying. I mean, why would you be laying off more staff if you know, as they must, that more people die now waiting for their determinations?
Well, ask Joni Ernst.
Yeah.
People die.
Joni Ernst said, people are going to die. So I think that's where they're headed. I think they're going to precipitate an emergency, so then they can do whatever they want to do without having to abide by procurement laws. And I think they're going to remove the humans from evaluating cases.
Can I just add one thing to
Sure.
what they're doing?
Can I?
At least in California, thank you. At least in California, one thing they're trying to do to speed up the process is normally the analyst, who's not a medical practitioner, makes a recommendation, and then either a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a medical doctor, depending on the underlying impairment, they make the ultimate determination recommendation whether the claim should be paid or not. Now, they're apparently giving the analysts, without getting medical input, the decision-making authority, so that theoretically, that's what saves some time. Now, I don't know if they're doing it nationwide, but at least in California, they're starting to do that.
We were using machines to some degree to curate, there are now 1,000 pages of medical documents, but we never wanted to take the humans out of the loop.
So then my question is, if somebody dies before they can collect, and there's no beneficiary, where does the money go?
Where'd that question go?
I think it's, we sort of heard that is on the account. So, but your question is, if somebody has earned their benefits and they die, they have no spouse, they have no survivors, where does the money go? It doesn't go. It stays in the trust fund. Because it's like an insurance company. If you don't make a claim, if you paid in all those years but your house never burned down, that money that you paid in doesn't come back to you. It stays in the risk pool.
So in other words, the government can't break into and take that money out for any of the projects.
Where you're not supposed to. The follow-up question. Yeah, pardon?
I said they have to.
Well, let me address some of that, because we've heard this before, unless you want to.
I couldn't even hear what it said.
Okay, here's the question. The question is that the government breaks in and apparently can take the money and use it for all sorts of other things. They don't, and there's a few myths about that. We heard one in the last town hall that George Bush took money out of there for the Iraq War. Not true. Didn't happen, but a lot of people believe it did. What was the other one we heard? The government uses it for all sorts of things. Not true, except in this sense. Congress requires that big, and has since 1982, that $2.7 trillion surplus from the dollars that we've paid in. They require by law that be invested in U.S. Treasury notes. So in a sense, if you invest personally in U.S. Treasury notes, you are lending money to the federal government to do with whatever they like. But it's backed up by full faith and credit. So if you need to do administrative agreements, they pay you the value of those notes. Same thing with Social Security. There are some who say, well, that's only worthless paper. What I tell you is that the $20 in my pocket is also then worthless paper, but I'm going to go into Napa and buy a sandwich with it after this. And because it's backed up by the full faith and credit of the United States.
So
Did
then
that answer your question?
Well, my second question to that is, if it goes over the cap, then can Congressman take the excess money and use that for something?
When it goes over the cap. I'm not.
You said that 2.3 trillion or whatever. That's
No, there is no
in the
cap on
trust.
what they can save. No, there's no cap on what they can save.
So there's no cap.
No cap on what they can put into the trust fund.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes that clear.
And
It sounded like there's
today,
a cap.
yeah, no, there's another cap that we talked about in other places, which we may get into. Today, the trustees report came out. The most recent one comes out once a year. It should be online by now. And they lay this out in pretty decently, understandable, plain English, the forecast and how it works. Boy, that was a long, sir, sit down, or otherwise we're not going to get in.
Well, another thing my brother was...
I knew it.
All right, anyway, another thing my brother was telling, he's a retired computer scientist. And he said, a lot of those people that were put into place, that Elon Musk put in, they're misinterpreting the ages and everything because they don't know COBOL.
That's true. COBOL. So the question was, so does he like streaming home?
And
This guy's
my
brother.
brother knows it.
His brother doesn't. He's not the guy that watches Fox. COBOL is a computer code that they no longer teach in school.
Yeah.
And so it is, a lot of those people perhaps misinterpreted it. Perhaps they just intentionally decided to tell us that they were all these walking dead around us. Okay, next question.
I have a question. Your wife gives you $20 walking around here?
Hi, I'm so glad that you came on Saturday to the protest. We really appreciate all of you who came. Thank you, thank you. One of the questions I have is maybe not directly to Social Security, but it's something I keep getting emails about, which is I keep hearing that the dollar is going to go away, and there's not going to be any more dollars. There's going to be some other kind of payment system, and I don't know how that could possibly be the case, especially with Social Security. It's so complex. Could you make a comment or two about that, please?
Well, I suspect you're talking about the concern over alternate currencies, specifically the Bitcoin stuff that's going on. And I think suspicions have been heightened because you've got a president that, in addition to selling hawking Teslas on the White House lawn, they're also peddling Bitcoin out of the Lincoln bedroom. So I think it's something to be concerned about. And I think there's been to date a real void in regard to congressional oversight on that particular type of currency. And the Congress is in the process right now of trying to better regulate that. And it's like anything else, it's going to take time. And I hope that we're able to achieve that. And you don't achieve that by doing away with all state governments over this policy. And that's what they're trying to do right now, get the states out of it. And I think that's a concern, because some states are far more ahead of the federal government in regard to protecting our financial interests.
Two questions, please. Number one, just for everybody to know, I get emails, spams all day long. The last one was from SSA.gov, saying that my social security number had been suspended. I wasn't born yesterday, it's the day before. So I went down to my local office, thank goodness they're open, and they told me, no, you would not get something in the email, and they can change whatever site they sent from, say they're from whoever. So just be aware, if you get that, don't call the number, don't answer the email, delete it. Second question, I keep hearing about Social Security is going to run on the funds of 2033?
34. Yeah.
I'm still going to be a lot better than that. So what can be done, if anything, to prevent that from happening? Thank you.
Well, let me start with the first issue that you raised. There's scams every day. So if you have a concern about anything, my rule of thumb is don't open anything. If you have a concern, call. And you're welcome to call my office. We're able to run that stuff out. I just delete that stuff before it comes in. But you can't turn around without receiving 4 or 5 scams. There are people out there that they're preying on people and trying to take advantage of people. So I completely understand that. Yeah, there are a number of things that can be done to strengthen the Social Security system. The Governor talked about a couple of them. And he's correct that Social Security is in the jurisdiction of the committee on which I sit. And I'm not on that subcommittee, but I sit right next to John Larson, who is the ranking member of that subcommittee, and I hear every day from John how we need to step it up and make these improvements. And he's had legislation for how many years now? Probably 3 or 4 Congresses. And he's proposing certain changes that I believe are good changes. I'm a co-author of his bill this year, and I was in previous years. It's not apocalyptic. You heard the numbers, 19%.
19% cut if they don't adjust it.
So if we did nothing for how many years?
Until 2034.
If we do nothing between now and 2034, you would see a 19% reduction on your check. So the idea is, or what the other side would like you to believe is the wheels are off. It's going to blow up. It's going to implode. And you know, if you had a 19% downturn in your business, you wouldn't go put a "we're broke, we're bankrupt, we're closing the door" sign out. You fix that, especially if that 19% is going to come in 2034.
Tell the oil change story.
When I pulled into the parking lot today in Santa Rosa, I looked up, and you know the little sticker they put in your windshield, tell you when you need to have your oil changed? Well, I'm like 4,000 miles behind times. I should have had it changed 4,000 miles ago. But that doesn't mean that my car blew up from Santa Rosa to here. It just means that I need to step it up and schedule an oil change. And that's
why you don't get $20
the things that
for
we
life.
need to do, but it's not, the system hasn't imploded, and there are some things we need to do, starting with probably the most popular thing that we've talked about and heard about during our little roadshow is the adjusting the cap on wealthy people. I think it's important to say, the government said, well, they all know about the cap. But, you know, I think your explanation, I've never heard it quite that well, the 170,000 versus the 170 million. I think you should
Do that one?
Yeah.
Do that sign again?
Yeah.
We're going to sign and share here. Yeah, so most people don't realize it because most of us never make more than $170,000. But if we're fortunate enough and hardworking enough to make $170,000, we pay about $10,000 of that into Social Security. That's like, but we don't pay anything more after that first $170,000. Which means a family of 4 making $170,000 pays $10,000 in. And a single person making $170 million also pays just $10,000 in. And so most Americans think that's not fair.
And my older colleague here will tell you this. I was 5 and he was 6.
I have a question. Recently, I was extending and doing some, getting some help, whatever, and they asked for my social security number. I was shocked. And then a month later, I was at Macy's. They wanted me to sign up for whatever, and they asked me for my social security number. And then another, recently, I can't remember what it was, they're asking me for my social security number. I thought that was a government thing, private, it's not a general ID, is it? Should they be asking for my social security number?
I don't give people my social security number. If you remember when you got that card, it says on the card something along the lines of not for identification purposes. And I don't know why someone would need to show their social security number to a department store. I would recommend against it.
Yeah, but it has really become everywhere. It's ubiquitous. I didn't, until I got tapped to do this job, I wasn't cognizant of any time I was asking my social security number. But it also explains why all of our social security numbers are potentially available for sale on the black market. Because they get them not from social security, knock on wood, may change because they've driven out all of the leadership of their cybersecurity office. But Social Security's never had this giant breach or theft of Social Security numbers. But other people that use Social Security numbers as if it's a date of birth have had Social Security numbers.
If the department store asks you for yours, you give it?
I don't get credit for the department stores. That's Mrs. O'Malley's job. She probably does because she has credit cards. Which I try to cut up as quickly as we get them. What I push back on, a few times I've asked, and I had it on the road, I give the last 4 digits, and they generally take that.
First of all, Congressman Thompson, thank you very much for your continued service over the years. Many years of fantastic service. Thank you. In the long run, pending the next election, I would not be that worried about the future of Social Security, depending upon how we can get better representatives in Congress that will be more responsive. My main question is, what is to prevent Taco from postponing or delaying the elections? Is there anything that can be done in Congress in case he wants to eliminate elections going forward?
I'm not terribly concerned about the postponement of an election. I feel confident that we will have a midterm election, and as important, maybe more important, I feel confident that Democrats will bring back the House. We need to focus on red districts, so we need to spend our time, our attention, and our resources. Those are the seats that we can pick up and make a difference. And I feel confident that that's going to happen. We're going to win, and we'll be able to provide a backstop against some of the stuff that he's doing. And then 2 years later, he's gone. We put in a president who cares about the people in the United States.
And not unless all of us put the work into it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. It's going to take a lot of work. We came remarkably close in the last election. But I'm here to tell you, a close counts of horseshoes and hand grenades. And it doesn't count in elections. And so we were just that close to making it happen. And if you look at the numbers, the seats that we flipped and the gains we made is very, very impressive. But close doesn't count in elections. So we need to make sure that everybody works really hard and we pull it off this time.
Congressman, I just find it fairly ironic that the administration is turning away the very people that sustain us on a daily basis on the farms and fields in California. And those same people, I would think, also contribute to the Social Security system. And so if we're looking to rejuvenate the system and replenish the system, we're turning around the very organs that we need to do that, and they're the same people that are feeding us. I just really
both sides of the feeding part. The tariff stuff that we're doing has been disastrous to agriculture, as it was during the last term that this guy had. And if you recall, the way that he placated the farmers, especially the Midwest farmers, he gave them a subsidy, and that was our tax dollars. And then if you look at what's going on now in the immigration space and the ag and hospitality space, it's just a disaster. And not only are they creating big holes in our labor force, where businesses are not, and agricultural businesses included, are not able to get the workforce that they need, they're also eroding a big part of our consumer base. Because folks who work in agriculture and hospitality at all, they buy a lot of stuff, and they really help the economy and help the market. And Governor, you were very explicit today on how much money certain parts of our community put into Social Security and how that would harm us if those folks were taken away. And these are exactly the folks he's trying to drive away. You want to explain that?
Sure. The big myth is told that illegal immigrants, so-called undocumented workers, are milking Social Security dry, that they're driving it to bankruptcy, when the truth is they are prohibited by the Act from ever receiving any Social Security benefits, nor does the time they work while they're paying into Social Security earn them any credits to ultimately become insured. The point is that illegal immigrants, so-called undocumented workers, pay them $25 billion a year that they'll never see a penny of, but it's for the benefit of all the rest of us. So you're right, that has that consequence. I mean, if somebody has asked me, what are they doing? Why are they, what do they want with their data? Part of what they were using it for is to use it against immigrant people. If people ever stay their visa, this guy said, we're going to terminate their financial lives by falsely marking their Social Security record as deceased. And because Social Security keeps, horrible name, the master death file, all the banks came off of that. So if they get, in their routine checks on that data, if they see that somebody's died, they stop the bank account so that the nefarious person doesn't steal it from the estate. So it can create a real mess. There was an article of a guy who was incorrectly labeled as dead. And he was quoted in the article in the Washington Post saying, he said, if you truly are, it's not much of a problem, but if you're still alive, it can create a real mess.
I did. I didn't have to read about it in the newspaper. I had a constituent, someone from our district, who called me to tell me she was dead. And according to Social Security, and as the governor points out, she was very much alive, and it was a problem for her. Had she been dead, it would have been no problem at all. But she was very much alive, and she wasn't an undocumented immigrant. She wasn't an immigrant anywhere close to present time. So somebody in her family at one point was, but she wasn't. And it took, my staff got on it, opened a case. We got it squared away, but it took a lot of time and it created a lot of problems for her.
Jay Brooks, thanks for taking my questions. I have two. When we take back both houses, in terms, can we undo the damage that has been done to the Social Security organization?
When we take back
when we take back the House and the Senate, the Democrats.
I'm convinced that we'll take back the House in this midterm election.
Can we
undo the damage?
Yeah, we can. But I don't want anyone to think that the votes are counted, we win the House, and everything's back to normal. This is going to take some time. And it's not just in the Social Security space. They're cutting $880 billion from Medicaid. It's going to cause all kinds of health care problems. You've seen the cuts. They're proposing 83,000 cuts to the Veterans Administration. Right after we added 1 million veterans to the PAC Act to the VA. Some of the cuts that they've already made in the Veterans Administration are the people that answer the crisis hotline number, and the list goes on and on. The research that they've disrupted at major universities, the big one in our district is UC Davis, and they took a hit on all the ag research that they've been doing in conjunction with USAID, and they took a big hit on their healthcare areas. There's 3 areas of healthcare research that UC Davis is iconic in this field. One is cancer research, one is Alzheimer's research, and one is spina bifida. And when you cut off the research dollars like that, even in the instances where they've where he tacos and open the research areas back up, it doesn't. You don't just flip the switch off and on. I've had research folks at Davis tell me, that we were shut off for a month and a half, and they turned it back on. We've lost everybody. We've lost our control group. We've lost researchers. People have gone to other areas. They've gone from UC Davis to the private sector, where they're doing research to make people money, not doing research to make people healthier necessarily. Some of them have gone to foreign governments. I had one researcher who was recruited away from a foreign government back to this country and was terminated because they were a probationary employee. And I talked to this researcher 3 days in a row. First day to tell me what happened. Second day to tell me how it was going. Third day to tell me they just accepted a job at a university in Denmark. So if you want to really accelerate the race to the bottom, send all of our researchers to universities in other countries.
One last question. Hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits have been and are being filed across the country against this administration or actions.
255 the last time I saw.
Are there any lawsuits going forward concerning Social Security or the damage we've done to it?
Yeah, there's a few of them. They generally, people that are into the litigation aspect of this tend to talk about them, like one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal our personal data. That one, we got a good ruling from a federal judge who put a temporary restraining order until the hearing on the merits. He said, "Judge, put the stuff back, put it out of here, don't go in it again." But then the Supreme Court reversed it. It gave them access again. There's another one called Thou shalt not disparately impact people with disabilities, which if they're suffering the disparate impact of these cuts. That one is still going along without a temporary restraining order. There is Thou shalt not illegally fire people, and that one I think is going successfully. The big one I'm waiting for is when there's a benefit interruption, and you're going to be inundated with plaintiffs' lawyers advertising and asking you to become part of a class action, which is foreseeable. If you thought mesothelioma, load up your television set with ads, wait till they interrupt your Social Security benefits. So that could be a class action coming up. Very active litigation.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you both for being here, and I'm enjoying the information. I have a question for each of you. Governor, the $2.7 trillion trust fund is in Treasury bills right now.
Correct.
And if it were to be privatized, where would that money go, and who would be managing it? How would that work?
Well, that's the big question. I might be better off deferring to you, Mike, on this one.
Well, I can tell you that those folks who would like to privatize Social Security, they're looking at one thing, and it's not anybody in this room. It's not anybody we know. It's not anybody we care about who depends on Social Security. They're looking at that trust fund, and the dollar signs are driving them wild. So however that shakes out, if it were to come to fruition, those folks would be the ones that would get that money and would be the ones investing that money. And as I said earlier, if everything's rosy and the economy's cooking, you're probably fine. But if there's ever a downturn, we've all lived through a bunch of them, we know they happen, then whoever those folks are, they're going to have to determine, do I tighten my belt and make sure the people down in Napa who need Social Security get their check uninterrupted, or do I make sure that I add to my tremendous wealth uninterrupted? And I think you probably know the answer to that.
I think I can add. Can I add just a couple things on that? When I was governor of Maryland, part of our pension system was invested in the stock market, and there are some that had suggested that back in 1983, but actually Congress decided no, they don't want anybody in a political position saying, I'm investing all this money in a stock called Trump Towers or in Exxon or whatever it might be. So Congress decided against that, putting it in the most conservative thing. Most states don't operate like that. They invest, yes, in very conservative, safe places, like the full faith and credit of the United States government and U.S. bonds, but they also invest some in stocks, and they appoint individual sort of investment firms to have to be qualified to bid on that work to invest it with a promised rate of return. But it is the market, you know?
Thank you for that. And Congressman, I hear, I'm disappointed in the Republican legislators, especially in the Senate, who seem to lack the courage to be doing the right thing at the moment. And it seems, from what I hear, that the big fear for them is that they're going to be primary, or money's going to come from Trump, so to get them primary, they lose their position. It's very disappointing to see that. I know it's hard to become a senator, but to put yourself ahead of your constituents is very disappointing. I can't believe, though, that there aren't a good number of Republicans that's not their only fear. There must be other fears behind this, pressure coming from the Trump administration. What do you hear? What do you know? What can you share with us about behind the scenes, what these people, these legislators are afraid of?
Well, I don't know that I know anything for certain more than what you've read or what you understand. I know that when it was time for the Senate to confirm the Secretary of Defense, there was one voice in the Senate, Joni Ernst from Iowa, who had been, she had had some abuse issues when she was in the military, and pretty much said that this nominee was kind of the embellishment of the problems that she had, and that she was 100% against him, would not vote for him. And the rumor on Capitol Hill is that Senate Republicans told her if she didn't vote for him, to vote to confirm him, they would primary her, and they'd spend $100 million doing it. I've been working with the hospital folks. Healthcare is something that's in my policy wheelhouse. I do a lot of that on these cuts to Medicaid that would really hurt all of us, and those of us in rural districts even more. I've been working with not only our healthcare providers in our district, but those outside the area, trying to figure out how to try and get some Republicans to move in our direction. And California is in their sights, because one particular, there's a Valley congressional district that's represented by a Republican, has the highest Medicaid population in the United States of America. And the individual, the Republican member from there, ended up voting not once but twice to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. And one of the hospital groups, without telling me who, said that they had talked to 2 California members who said, no matter how I vote on this, I'm going to lose my election. And now, if that were me, if I were confronted with a situation like that, I'd vote for my constituents. I'd vote on the side of the angels. Why they didn't, I don't know. Maybe it's because they think they get an appointment in this administration. I just don't know. I don't ask me to get in their heads because I don't understand it. I thought we were sent to Washington to do the best job we can for the people that we represent. get you an Army hat.
Don't you dare. Can you please explain the repeal of WEP and GPO?
I can. What's the second question?
The second question is, when is Congress going to stop taxing Social Security benefits?
So the first question is, there is a certain amount of our population who work in areas where they are not qualified. They have a different type of pension, so they don't. They gave up their Social Security in order to get into this other type of pension, but they had worked a requisite number of quarters to qualify for Social Security, and it's been a long effort to remove that prohibition so you could get your credit and your benefit from the time that you worked in Social Security. We passed that. It's become law. President Biden signed it into law. In regard to taxation on Social Security benefits, that's an issue right now in the Congress, and there is legislation as part of the big ugly bill, but it doesn't actually do as you questioned. It is not written to prohibit tax against Social Security. It's written kind of a seven-bank shot way where people on Social Security would get a little added benefit. I think the most important thing to remember when you're looking at all of the proposals, all the tax proposals in the big ugly bill, is what the distribution charts show where that money goes. So if, and the distribution charts that's the data, that's the point of the realm in the tax lane. It tells where every dollar goes, who gets how much, when, where, and how come. And the distribution charts break it down in a way that shows clearly that if this bill were to be signed into law, in addition to doing all those things that we talked about, healthcare cuts, etc., and in addition adding $5 trillion to our national debt, when the tax cut provision comes into law, anybody making under $50,000 a year would receive a tax cut, and it works out to be about 72 cents a day. If you make $1 million a year, now this isn't somebody who 50 years ago bought a house in Napa and now you're a millionaire because property values have grown, or that you have a 401k and you own half a house in Napa and you're a millionaire. These are people who make $1 million a year. And I would suggest that if you're making $1 million a year, you probably don't need a tax cut in this environment. You probably need okay. So 72 cents a day if you're making under 50,000 or under. If you make $1 million a day, $272 a day. $1 million a year, $272 a day for people who don't need a tax cut.
I just have one more thing to say, and I'll let you all repeat after me. Impeach Trump.
I voted to do that twice, as you know. And he was in fact impeached twice by the House. Sadly, the Senate didn't do what they should have done. And there were Republicans with morals, ethics, and a spine. That wasn't enough to cross that 60-vote threshold. And I'm just glad that you said that. Thank you all. One more. Okay.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to meet Mr. Governor and Mr. Congressman. How are you going to strengthen in protecting Social Security fundings for funds for Social Security earnings in protecting them from the big ugly bill of the Republican budget?
Well, as you know, I've already voted against the big ugly bill once in the committee, because we have jurisdiction, so it comes to my committee, once on the floor, and I was part of that all night, all day, half the next night marathon, putting amendments across to try and mitigate some of the danger of the big ugly bill. All of that went straight down party lines. And I had some pretty simple amendments. I had one that would reverse what they were trying to do, stripping out all the renewable energy tax cuts. And the other was an amendment to strip out their provision that made individuals eligible to buy silencers over the counter. And I think this needs to be flushed out a little bit. You know, it's not like James Bond. You put a silencer on the gun. In a James Bond movie, he shoots 20 people without reloading, and it doesn't make a noise. The reality is, a silencer for a firearm doesn't silence it, it disperses the sound. So if you're at a concert in Las Vegas and somebody's up in a building shooting people, it makes it hard to run if you don't know where the shooting is coming from. And similarly, if law enforcement, the guys in the back of the room who put on a uniform every day and keep us safe, if they respond to a shooting and the sound's dispersed, they have no idea where the shooting's coming from either. And for 100 years, silencers have been regulated, and now they, in this bill, they stripped silencers from that regulation. And it was made worse today. The Senate version of the big ugly bill deregulated silencers, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns. So you don't have to worry about me voting against the big ugly bill. And the reason that it's so important for everybody here to understand what all of this legislation does and what it means for all of us and our friends and people across the country is so you can spread the word. As the governor said, you know, if your uncle or your brother-in-law gets his news only from Fox and they're not hearing the whole story, it's incumbent upon you to tell the truth and explain this stuff. And I know it's hard. I hear it every day. I've got critics who, if I said today was,
Wednesday, yeah.
If I said today is Wednesday, they'll say you're lying. And that's kind of their pat response. You're lying. Some of them have expanded the vocabulary and say you're effing lying. You get the point. We need to be armed with the truth, armed with the facts. That's one of the reasons that we're doing this Social Security Town Hall meeting today. Over in Sonoma earlier today, in Davis yesterday. I think it's been incredibly successful. The audiences, this one no exception, have been absolutely fantastic. We're glad to be able to be here with you, Governor. Thank you for coming to my district. Further